So I'm going to start with just a default Photoshop sized page, and then I'm going to go down here and right click and add a solid color background with a hue of 223, saturation is 80, and brightness is 40 to kind of fit. This is a pretty similar color to the Spider-Man background. And then you're going to want to add a gradient, radial gradient, and you go in here, change the color to white, and increase the scale to a little bit, about like 114-ish, and then right click on the gradient, blending options, and then make it an overlay, so it's just kind of more subtle in the background. Now to start with the text, so I'm just gonna go in with the text here. I'm just gonna write welcome home, kind of in fashion with the titles of the Spider-Man movies. Center it. Then I'm going to duplicate this layer by right clicking on it twice, welcome home 2, and then welcome home 3, and then just turn those layers off for now. So going into the first welcome home layer, I'm going to right click on it and go into blending options, and then I'm going to add a gradient overlay. These are the colors that I use. It's just the color on the left, which is on the bottom of the text, is a hue of 55, saturation 100, brightness 78, and then on the right it is a hue of 48, saturation 67, brightness 100, and it's a linear gradient. You're going to add a stroke, and the purpose of this stroke is to just remove 4 pixels. This is just to make the font smaller, so when we add the stroke later, the size will stay the same. So now going on to the next layer, you can turn this on now. We're going to go into blending options again, and start by turning the fill opacity down to 0, so then when we add effects, only shows the effects, it doesn't show the text on top. So we're just layering effects on top of the text. We're going to add an inner shadow, and it's going to be red. So the hue is 0, saturation is 94, and brightness is 56. And the blend mode is going to be pin light, and the distance is going to be 10 pixels, and then angle at 111 degrees. And the opacity is 50%. Just type that here, it's easier. So that's it for Welcome Home 2. And then Welcome Home 3, we're going to turn that on. Blending options. We're going to turn down the fill opacity to 0 once again. We're going to add stroke. So this one's going to have the opacity up. And for the stroke is going to be red once again, with a hue of 359, saturation of 84, and brightness of 83. And then we're going to add a bevel and emboss, and use the stroke emboss style. Technique is chisel hard, increase the depth to 115, and the size is 7, and soften to 12 pixels. And we're going to keep the global light at 130 degrees. And then we're going to set the highlight mode to overlay with an opacity of 40%, and then the shadows to multiply and an opacity of 30%. Then we're going to edit the gloss contour. So I'm going to select this one that kind of looks like an M, and then we're going to get rid of this one, take that down, just kind of make it a softer M curve. To add an inner shadow, that's going to be black, and then with the blending mode is linear light to kind of add some depth within the text. Opacity at 100. Distance is 3 pixels. Choke is 48%, and the size is 11 pixels. This is kind of where the text is right now, and we're going to need to add the kind of honeycomb texture pattern within the text to kind of make it look like the spider suit. Okay, so just on a square shaped Photoshop file, I'm going to start by adding a color fill background of black just by pressing the solid color. And then on a new layer, I'm going to add a hexagon just by using the polygon tool and then setting the sides to 6. So it's just going to be white. And then I'm going to make it even on both sides. So I'll change the height to 1300 so it matches. Rotate it. And I rotated it just by pressing Control T and then duplicate it. So we have multiples of the same exact size, and then duplicate it one more time. So it goes right there. I'll first crop it. I'm going to use the cropping tool to crop this down. So then that's the crop, and then we're going to remove the fill, and then go to Edit, Define Pattern, and then we're going to do honeycomb pattern. Okay. So coming back into the text file, we're going to right click on Welcome Home 3, go back into blending options, and add a pattern overlay, change the pattern to this honeycomb one, and then it's going to need to scale down pretty much all the way so it looks just like that. I'm going to make the blend mode vivid light, and then the opacity is 8%, so it's just really subtle. Now I'm going to be creating the excursion, so I have all the rest of the layers turned off, just the first welcome home layer is on, and then I'm going to press the object selection tool, highlight it, and then go here and right click and add a solid color, so this will kind of cut out the text, and then pull that down underneath. So and then I'm going to scale this down a little bit, so I'll turn that off for now. Press Control T, I'll scale it down to like 99.7, and then turn this back on. Control Alt Shift, and then hold that down, and then keep pressing T to create the excursion. So it looks like, I think that's probably good. So I just manually merged all the layers together by holding Shift and clicking on each one, and then pressing Control E. Going to right click on this and then click blending options, and then add in a color overlay with hue set to 2, saturation. The saturation is 67 and the brightness is 18 to get this kind of deep burgundy shade. Then just keep the blending mode on normal, and then add a bevel and emboss, which is going to be an inner bevel. Chisel soft, and the highlight hue is going to be 218, 63, and 73. With the opacity at 80%, shadow opacity at 0. Check Views Global Light, change the gloss contour shape to a tall arch, so this one works. And the angle is going to be -90 degrees. So this is the final product. So you can see the texture inside and everything.